The Seahawks received excellent contributions from their cornerback group last year, including an unsung hero in Josh Jobe, but they have yet to play fully to their potential. Will we see that finally come to fruition in 2025? We're going to be breaking it down here in part 2 of our Seahawks training camp preview on Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our Tuesday show by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're in Shelton, Washington, or Pocatello, Idaho. We are drawing closer. We're really about 2 weeks away from the start of Seahawks training camp, so we're going to continue to take a deep dive into the essential questions revolving around this football team. Today, it's all about defense with the cornerback position. We're going to revisit the tackle group on the offensive line, who's got the most upside, who's got the most on the line, and some bold predictions. And we'll continue our 90-man rundown. We've got numbers 40 through 36 today as we continue to go full steam ahead to our top 25 Seahawks for the upcoming season. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDINNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. If you look at the depth chart, a strong argument can be made that the cornerback position is the most talented position on the Seahawks roster, especially with the recent addition of Shaquille Griffin, who right now is the fourth corner and might still be able to start for some teams in the league, but he'd be the fourth corner right now for the Seattle Seahawks. You've got a former top 5 pick in Devon Witherspoon, who's been a Pro Bowler each of his first 2 seasons. Riq Woolen was a Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist and a Pro Bowler his rookie year. He still had 3 picks and double-digit pass breakups for the Seahawks last year. And Josh Jobe, the revelation that he was starting 10 games a year ago with 6 pass breakups and an interception, played really good football to the point they re-signed him. We keep rattling off all these names, Rob, and yet I don't think we have seen this group come close to playing to their immense potential. It is still a group that it feels like there's some consistency that eludes it, particularly the 2 biggest stars at the top of the depth chart. And so that's the essential question to me. Maybe the most important one for a defense that has a lot going for it going into this 2025 season. In order for this group to play at its absolute best, can Riq Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, and this quarterback group fulfill their immense potential in year 2 in Mike McDonald's defense?
Well, I think that's certainly one of the most essential questions of this training camp process, and really, I think is going to basically be one of the signature developments of the 2025 season, and help determine how far the Seahawks go. As you just kind of explained, I mean, the Seahawks are immensely talented at the cornerback spot, but can Devon Witherspoon turn his incredible instincts, his playmaking ability, can he turn it into more big plays in terms of turnovers? Not the forced fumbles, but can he get some interceptions to kind of boost his statistics? So, to Riq Woolen, it's the exact opposite. He's had so many interceptions, of course, as you mentioned, Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist is a couple of seasons ago, when he led the NFL with 6 interceptions. At the same time, he's given up an awful lot of touchdowns, awful lot of penalties over the last couple of years. 14 touchdowns allowed over his 3 seasons in the NFL. Now, he had 11 interceptions to kind of counter that. But he also has some of the, again, it's one of the most penalized corners in all of the NFL. 24 penalties, including 7 this past season. Against Riq Woolen. So again, he's been such a feast and famine type of a player. So if he can kind of iron out some of the dips in his game, then I think that there's no question that the Seahawks' 2 primary starters can definitely take a jump up this upcoming season. And I think that it's interesting that the fact that the Seahawks did bring in Shaq Griffin. They signed him to a deal that is actually richer than the one that Josh Jobe signed, also on a 1-year deal. So I think that, again, when we're talking about the top 4 corners, those are the top 4 guys. Nehemiah Pritchett, the the rookie from a year ago who showed flashes and has the skill set to potentially project as a starter in the future. You have a pretty talented group here, but it does feel like a group that there's still some meat left on the bone, so to speak. It does feel like this group can develop a little bit more consistency in terms of open field tackling, especially to Riq Woolen. And I would argue Josh Jobe as well. He had a couple of missed tackles, one against the Cardinals, one against the 49ers that were big a year ago. Again, I think that the talent is there. I think the opportunity with an improved pass rush and certainly stellar play at the safety and linebacker positions around them, that the cornerbacks should be able to flourish in 2025.
This really, some would consider this nitpicking, but this is what you have to do when you're trying to win Super Bowls. Like, you got to find a way to develop your players to the point where they are their best all-around selves. And I don't think we have seen that yet from Riq Woolen or Devon Witherspoon. And you can make, to a lesser extent, the same argument with Josh Jobe because he's still a young player that hasn't played a ton of football in the NFL. All three of these players have untapped potential. I think Shaquille Griffin is the polished guy added to this group. At this stage of his career, maybe he can get a little bit better, but I think generally what you see is what you get now with Shaquille Griffin. He is that veteran, that stability insurance policy that you're bringing in that still is fast enough to be able to handle top-of-the-line receivers. If you have to put him in the lineup, he can get the job done. But really, it's the other three guys. And you look at him, Devon Witherspoon, everybody's going to point to the ball production. And obviously, that has been the one area that we have not seen him really take off. He didn't have an interception last year. He did have quite a few pass breakups. He was getting his hands on the football. But getting his hands on interceptions, that's what really sets the elite corners apart. And then Riq Woolen, it's just trying to eliminate some of those. I don't want to call them brain farts because I don't think that's necessarily what's caused it. But he has had some coverage mishaps. He's had some assignment breakdowns, and that has continued into his third season. And we've seen those touchdowns that he's allowed. He has been more susceptible in the red zone than a lot of your really good corners are. And that's the biggest area he's got to work on to me. The tackling improved some last year. There's still room for him to get better in that regard. Consistency to his game. That is what Riq Woolen has to check off here with his contract about to expire. Can you show that you can put everything together for a full season and be consistent and not have some of those miscues that lead to touchdowns for other teams? You're going to get beat some as a corner in the NFL. That is a given. But you got to find a way if you're Riq Woolen, can I get better? Can I really push the envelope with the tools I have? And Devon Witherspoon, to me, has been the more consistent player, but you're looking for those splash plays that he is more than capable of making. And again, we've talked about this. I think getting him on the boundary more is going to help with that. I think it's going to create more opportunities for him to make plays in the football, especially if Riq Woolen's playing really well on the other side. You could sprinkle in Nick Emanwari or one of those other guys into the slot. There's a lot of different stuff that you could do to get him out of the boundary and maybe create some more opportunities for him. And at the same time, you don't want to eliminate him from playing nickel because of his blitzing ability and just how good of a run defender he is and how consistent he's been in that regard. Jobe is the X factor here because maybe Griffin ends up coming in and taking the job from him. We don't know how this is going to play out. But Josh Jobe was really rock solid last year, and yet the passer rating creeped up every start that he had. He started to give up a few more plays as the season progressed. There were a few missed tackles in there. There are areas for him to build off last season. It's sometimes for a guy that comes out of nowhere like that, it's really hard to replicate that performance, let alone get better. That's going to be the challenge for him. That's going to be the challenge for Mike McDonald, Carl Scott, and the rest of this coaching staff. Can we coax that out of him to be an even better player for us in 2025?
Yeah, a lot of things you said there, I 100% agree with. I'm going to start with the Josh Jobe comment that you just made about basically just the fact that Josh Jobe, didn't have any expectations with the Seahawks a year ago. And now there is the expectation that he might just be playing at a starting caliber level. And so I think that good kudos to the Seahawks for bringing in Shaq Griffin because he does feel like he is kind of that extra that bat on the in the dugout, so to speak, that you can bring onto the field and perhaps push or even move right on past Josh Jobe as far as being that third corner for the Seahawks. And then kind of going back to a moment here with Devon Witherspoon. Look, I don't want to sound disrespectful at all when I talk about Witherspoon, because to me, he's the heartbeat of the defense. With all due respect to, an absolute superstar like Leonard Williams, for example, I just really think that Devon Witherspoon, that he defends every blade of grass, has that kind of mentality that, frankly, I wish that Riq Woolen showed a little bit more of. And that, to me, is one of the big differences, and why I do think that there is, again, a further potential for this cornerback group. I think that it is one of the best on paper in all of the NFL, but the production has not been there to justify that kind of lofty praise. And so that, to me, is going to be one of the real questions about. I love the fact that we're talking about the cornerback group here, the first one in the breakdown of the training camps, because, again, it does feel like there is so much more improvement you can see from this already gifted group that really could be the driving force behind a long playoff run for the Seahawks in 2025.
There's a lot more pie to eat up if you're this quarterback group. There's a lot left for this coaching staff to really develop this group. And to me, this is to me the biggest difference on whether this is a top 10, top 15 defense or potentially a top 3 or even the best defense in the league. If your quarterback group plays the way that I think and believe it is capable of, with the pass rush, with the linebackers they now have in the middle, I absolutely think that this quarterback group can be one of the best in the league, and it can really put this defense over the top and make them a dominant unit, as dominant as we've seen since the Legion of Boom era. But the corners have got to play to that level, and they've got to be consistent, and that's what is going to be really worth watching as we draw closer to the 2025 season. When we come back, let's go away from those trash-talking corners to some of the big fellas in the trenches. We're going to talk tackles coming out of the offseason program and going towards training camp. Who's got the most upside? Who's got the most of the line? And some bold predictions. We'll get to those coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game, including the Mariners playing 3 at Yankee Stadium against the Yankees. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL.com for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are drawing closer and closer to training camp. In fact, Rob, we're less than 24 hours away from being at the 2-week warning. We are that close to training camp. Not that, anybody's counting over here on our Locked On Seahawks podcast, but we've still got some position groups to dive into coming out of the offseason program. It has felt like this has been a tighter squeeze this year, which that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. But looking at the tackle group, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, it was so nice to see number 72 out there during OTAs and minicamp, playing without any injury issues, looking 100%. Being as chiseled of a 325-pound dude as you are going to see on a football field. It was really refreshing to be able to see that. This is a group that you're just hoping that health maintains, that you're going to have Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas out there. And this one is really fascinating. We're talking about who's got the most on the line of this group, because obviously with Abraham Lucas being a free agent, you don't have the fifth-year option that you have with Charles Cross. Yep. He's going to be a free agent next year. That would scream he's got the most of the line, especially with the injury issues he's had. He's got to go out and prove he can stay healthy and play at a high level for a 17-game season. But I'm going to argue for Charles Cross. And here's why I think Charles Cross has the most on the line. You're talking about a top 10 pick. Expectations are just that much higher when you're talking about a player that is picked in the top 10 selections. You use the first pick that you got from the Russell Wilson trade to invest in a pass protecting, blindside protecting left tackle. This is supposed to be your franchise guy. And we've seen Charles Cross play well, elite at times, but we've also seen times where he has looked like a mid-level at best left tackle. That can't happen anymore. He has got to consistently be a top 10 caliber tackle. And that's what the Seahawks are be looking for. They've got that fifth-year option available to them to ensure that he is not going to be a free agent this next year. But if they don't reach an agreement on a big contract, and even if they do, that just puts more pressure on Charles Cross. Can you now deliver with this investment that the Seahawks have made, doubling down, not just using a top 10 pick on you, but we are now paying you top 7, top 8 left tackle money with the expectation that that's how you're going to play moving forward. That puts a lot of pressure. If you don't have the contract, well, they're clearly holding back a little bit. I need to go earn that money. I think Charles Cross has a ton riding on this season, and that's not to say he won't be with the Seahawks the next year. Again, they have that fifth-year option, but if he wants that big-time deal, maybe the Seahawks are willing to do it before the season starts. I still think that should be what Seattle's trying to do, but there is absolutely a ton of the line for this former top 10 pick to elevate his game. He's got the right coach now to coach him. I think this is the best system for his athletic ability, the zone blocking. Go get it. Go prove that you are worthy of that kind of an investment.
Yeah, I think that you make a strong argument for Charles Cross. And I think that, I'm going to try and make an even stronger argument here, though, for his battery mate, Abraham Lucas, who you referenced as well, as being a logical candidate for this. So, look, I think that you can make an argument that Abe Lucas has more on the line than any Seahawk, regardless of position, on the entire roster this year. As you just kind of referenced with the injury questions, I mean, look, we're talking about a player who, at his best, is, in my opinion, at least, is a Pro Bowl caliber right tackle. I thought that he played his best football as a rookie, but unfortunately, he's only played in 13 of the last 34 games. I mean, think about that, 13 of the past 34 games. That is the opposite of the reliability that you need at the right tackle position. I think that Abraham Lucas's injury a year ago held this team back, where they basically had to push Mike Jarrell into the starting lineup. And, basically that was one of the biggest reasons why the Seahawks were unable to get to the playoffs a year ago. I thought that the running game suffered. The pass protection certainly suffered without Abraham Lucas. So his return, his healthy return, to me, from the Seahawks is a huge pressure builder and a pressure situation. And then for Abraham Lucas individually, it is a huge pressure situation. I mean, he's 27, or he will be 27 in October of this year. He's due $3.6 million on this year's contract. If he does have that 17-game regular season starting kind of a season, and he plays just the same level that he's always played at when he's been on the field, Corbin, I think he's going to get 5 times that $3.6 million type of offer on the free agent market. I mean, 5 times. So again, that's the kind of pay that I think that you're going to see for a guy that has demonstrated that type of ability, that has bounced back from the knee injury that basically has robbed him of almost 2 seasons. But again, this is the caliber of player that he is. So I think that there's more pressure on Abe Lucas, both on his individual future as well as the Seahawks' success in 2025.
Yeah, and I think we're talking upside. I don't want to keep making this all about Charles Cross, but again, you're a top 10 pick. You are an elite athlete. And honestly, Abraham Lucas is an even more athletic player if you're basing it off of relative athletic score. He tested better in a lot of different ways. But Charles Cross has that dancing bear skill set that should absolutely play perfectly in Clint Kubiak's zone scheme. And I think John Benton, this had to be one of the things that excited him most about this opportunity to come out to Seattle, because he's worked with some really exciting young tackles during his time with other teams, and he's had success getting those players to the next level. But Charles Cross has just as much upside as any of those players, because you're talking about a guy that's still only 24 years old. He's a couple years younger than Abraham Lucas. He was 21. He was a baby when the Seahawks drafted him. And I think John Benton is still looking at this like, God, I still got a guy that isn't even quite in the prime of his career here yet. what we can accomplish together in this offense with his skill set and just the way that he moves so fluidly. That's the kind of guy that thrives in this system. And it's going to boil down to, has the work been put in the weight room? Is he going to be strong enough to be able to finish off his blocks? You've still got to be able to have that finisher mentality, but the athleticism and getting out into space, that is going to be huge. It's going to be a hallmark of this offense. And so to me, I mean, you could make arguments for Lucas too, just because of the athletic traits he has, but I think that the ceiling is much higher for Charles Cross. That's why you take him with a top 10 pick. He's a couple years younger. He hasn't had the injuries to this point. So Cross, he is still the upside guy. And I think you could even maybe argue that Mike Jarrell might be number 2 here, just because of the clean slate you've got there with an extremely athletic kid that I still expect is going to be on this roster as a backup for the Seahawks in 2025.
Yeah, I love that you kind of led me that way. Let's kind of just do a refresh real quick of the tackles here. There's basically 6 guys that are on the roster right now that Seahawks are listing as tackles. They are most likely to keep for Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, the veteran swingman that they brought in, Josh Jones, that maybe we'll be talking about a little bit later in today's show, as well as the second-year pro Mike Jarrell, who, as you talked about, is just a terrific athlete, but from Findlay University, got pushed onto the field too much a year ago as a rookie and just looked like a deer caught in the headlights at times. But still, the athletic potential is through the roof. He's exactly the type of guy that you want to develop. Give him some time. They also have a couple of UDFAs. They're probably going to be fighting for a practice squad in Amari Kite and Luke Felix Fualalo. So this could be interesting to kind of see them duke it out throughout the training camp process. As far as the highest upside, I have to agree with you, Corbin, as far as the argument for Abe Lucas or even a Mike Jarrell, and hell, Josh Jones is a good football player himself. But I got to go back to Charles Cross. And just a couple of numbers here to kind of, I think, just kind of, tie the bow on the conversation here. This is a guy that just his durability, to me, is one of the things that's been most impressive. He's missed 3 total games in 3 NFL seasons so far. So started 48 out of 51 games so far. Of course, all at the left tackle position. He's only had a total of 7 penalties in those 3 seasons in the NFL. He did give up 6 sacks a year ago. And what was interesting is how many of those sacks actually came off of twists and stunts and pure power. He is very rarely beaten by pure speed. And that's the thing, is the NFL is shifting more and more towards speed rushers. You already have a terrific pass protector in terms of a guy that can seal off that edge against the speed rushers in Charles Cross. So I think that there is upside here, but he's already a very, very talented player who is just 25 years old. And has already said that he is, loves Seattle and wants to be back. So I think that he does have a lot of upside. He does have also a lot of pressure on him. I think that he is arguably the most valuable player on Seattle's entire roster. So again, between Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, the starting bookend tackles here, I think that we are talking about truly the backbone of this roster in a big way, not only in 2025, but moving forward as well, potentially.
All right, let's get to bold predictions. And based on the last 2 years, this absolutely is a spicy one, but I believe wholeheartedly we are going to see this. My bold prediction, Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas are going to start at least 16 games together this year. It's going to be like their rookie season. That might seem like that is quite a reach, quite a gamble with Lucas's injury history, but look, we've seen him. We've seen what he looks like on the field right now. I think he really has finally gotten past the stuff that has dogged in the last couple of years. Charles Cross has been very durable, and I think that this scheme is going to help to an extent with keeping these guys healthy too. So I just think that we're going to see both these guys really give the best that they've got this year, and they're going to be on the field to make sure that it happens.
Well, I love your prediction. We won't know the real answer to it until about January. For my prediction, we're going to know before the end of this month, Corbin. I expect either Charles Cross or Abe Lucas to get an extension before the start of training camp. That's my bold prediction.
If it's Lucas, that would really surprise me. But at the same time, he's a Seattle kid. So maybe something that gets worked out. Cross, to me, is the one that would make the most sense. But believe it or not, that was actually something that I was considering for my prediction, but I decided to go down the health road. So it ended up working out for us. When we come back, we've got our 90-man countdown, numbers 40 through 36. That'll be coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to Locked On Seahawks Tuesday edition. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. And for your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. We are drawing closer to the season. It might seem like a dead zone, but there's still roster moves and news. They never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, 90-man countdown time. We are now going to be going into the 30s, numbers 40 through 36, and some names that are going to resonate more with fans as we get away from the rookies and some of your undrafted players, and we really start to dive into guys who have suited up for the Seahawks or have suited up for significant snaps in the NFL. And Rob, we're going to be starting off this latest cluster with a player who I think you could make an argument the last 4 or 5 games was as efficient as any player on Seattle's roster with the opportunities that he had. And that was Kenny McIntosh. I thought Kenny McIntosh played really good football down the stretch. When Ken Walker III missed a bunch of the games late in the season, Zach Charbonnet had a couple games where he was kind of banged up. Kenny McIntosh, every time he got into the lineup, he made something positive happen, whether it was running the football effectively, getting big yardage on screens. He was even picking up pass protection assignments better than we've seen in the past, making improvements there. And there's just been so much talk about, well, Damian Martinez is now here. You've got a healthy Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet. Like, where does Kenny McIntosh fit? But you go back and you look at the film, it's like, well, I think he fits in quite nicely, and I think he's going to make it tough. And that's what makes this competition that we're going to see at that running back spot so damn intriguing. Is you've got 4 guys who absolutely could all stake a claim. Like, I should be getting carries on Sunday, and Kenny McIntosh belongs in that. He's not the strongest guy. He's not the fastest guy, but he's just a football player. And he surprised you with his contact balance, his ability to break through arm tackles. And he's got a little more wiggle than his testing would say or suggest that he has. And we know the pass catching, being a guy that played some of the slot at Georgia, he brings that element that I don't think any of Seattle's other running backs can match in this offense.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing about him. He's a little bit of a change up to an awful lot of fastballs. I mean, he is, he's kind of a slasher. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, about roughly, and he is a guy that doesn't have that elite straight line speed, but he does have some wiggle. He is a player that I thought that all the pressure in the world was on him a year ago. When Kenneth Walker went down, Zach Charbonnet was kind of shouldering the heavy load, and he's well built, well suited to playing that role of being the guy that can carry the load. Zach Charbonnet, you needed a guy that has a little bit more lateral juice and a little bit can kind of make you miss a little bit. And yet Kenny McIntosh forced, he had 5 broken tackles a year ago. So again, he does a lot of little things well. He got his opportunity and he ran with it, quite literally, averaging 5.5 yards a carry in that limited duty a year ago. So yeah, I think that it's going to be exciting to see how this running back group works out. I think carries go.
Let's go to the offensive line now. Josh Jones coming in as the new swing tackle. We know that George Fant, the reunion, unfortunately did not work out as hoped, battling knee issues, only played in a couple of games, and was on IR the rest of the season. So Seattle decides to go younger. Josh Jones, a significantly younger player than George Fant, and had a lot more experience at the college level. I know that you and I, when Josh Jones was coming into the NFL, it was, I believe, our first season working together full-time here on Locked On Seahawks, and we both love Josh Jones coming out of Houston, and we even mocked him to the Seahawks a few times. The path in the NFL has not gone the way that I thought it was going to go. When the Cardinals drafted him, I thought, oh boy, Arizona just got themselves a really nice mid-round value, and he started quite a few games in Arizona, and there were some flashes. He had some games that he played well, but he also had some games where he was absolutely outmanned and he was underwhelming. That led to him bouncing around. He was with Houston. He was with Baltimore last year. Really didn't see much action. But this is a guy who has some athleticism to him. He has positional flexibility. He hasn't just played both tackle spots. He also can play both guard positions. I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle gave him a football and said, hey, can you learn how to snap? That Josh Jones would do everything he could do, to figure out how to do it because he has been flexible in that regard. And that really adds emphasis to the idea of a swing tackle. So I think that Josh Jones is absolutely on this roster. I think he's the number 3. I think he is a major upgrade over what Stone Forsythe gave this team. And George Fant, if you had a healthy George Fant, I think there's similar players. But again, Josh Jones has had a healthier track record, and he's a much younger player than George Fant. So I think this is a guy you're hoping you don't have to have a ton of snaps for him in the starting lineup and that you have Abe Lucas and Charles Cross healthy. But if Clint Kubiak wants to bring back that 6th man, that 6th offensive line thing, Josh Jones could do that too. He's done that in the past at his prior stops. So I think that this is, at minimum, it is a flat line with your swing position compared to a healthy George Fant. I think you can make arguments that there's still some untapped potential there, though. So you do have more upside with that number 3 tackle. And it gives another guy that really can push and work with Mike Jarrell as well.
Kind of acknowledge here is he is one of the biggest, most imposing players on the Seahawks roster. Was a 4-year starter at the left tackle position in college. Comes into the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals. Talked about experience at all 3 of those positions, that positional versatility, and again, the size is all going to be really intriguing in Seattle's system. He is not the most fleet of foot athlete, and so in the wide zone blocking system, I do have some reservations, but I think that the positional versatility should allow him to be kind of that 6th man, as you said, Corbin, unless pushed to do so and you're kind of forced. I think then he can be kind of a solid, kind of get you through a game or two. But his ability to play multiple positions, if called upon, I think really
My apologies to our listeners. I don't know what's going on. Rob froze like 6 times there in the last couple minutes, so we don't know. The connection was great here until the last couple minutes. Have no idea what's going on that front, but my apologies. All right, let's get to our next 2 players here on defense. 2 players that are at different spots in their career. Riley Mills coming off an ACL tear, 5th-round pick out of Notre Dame. We don't know when he is going to be back on the field. Now, this is just my opinion on what I've seen, and I'm not a doctor, so who the hell knows if I'm right on this or not. But the fact that he was starting to do some drill work in OTAs and minicamp where he was at least working on his get-offs at like 60%, that to me was a really positive sign that Riley Mills was making progress here, maybe ahead of schedule. And he even said after the draft that he was ahead of schedule. The Seahawks are going to exercise caution here. They're not going to throw him in until he is 100% ready to roll. But I do wonder if there's maybe now a sliver of hope that Riley Mills could be ready for the start of the season. And if he is, that's a big, big addition for Seattle's defensive line, because you're talking about a guy that can play end, he can play stand-up, he can play tackle. He's got the size to do that. He gives you some interior pass rushing, and we know that depth-wise, Seattle needs that right now with some of the losses that they've had. So Riley Mills, there's injury questions. At the safety position, Jarek Reed, it's been a couple of years since he had his ACL tear during his rookie season, and it abruptly ended what was a very promising rookie year for the 6th rounder out of New Mexico. One of Seattle's very best special teams players, had a bunch of tackles, down some punts inside the 5-yard line. He was playing great football. Then he has an injury. He came back middle of last season, but we see this a lot with guys that have to come back off serious knee injuries in the middle of the season. You don't have training camp. You don't have that true prep. You just get thrown back into action. He didn't look like the same player. And he was held out as a healthy scratch in favor of Ty Akata and A.J. Finley a couple of games. I still think that Jarek Reed II has far more upside than either one of those players have. I still think there's potential for him to be a guy that could play on defense on Sundays. But you need him to be healthy. And now that he's more than a year removed from the knee injury that really held him back most of last year, I think we have a chance to maybe see rookie year Jarek Reed again really go out and be one of the best special teams players and give himself a very good chance to stick on this roster at maybe the deepest position group on the entire roster, safety.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we're talking about two players, two positions that couldn't be much more different between a defensive tackle and a Riley Mills and a safety and special teams ace and Jarek Reed. And yeah, it's the injury questions that are going to link these two players. When they're healthy, both of them are difference makers. Both of them are very instinctive, highly physical players. With Riley Mills, I'm intrigued by the lateral agility that he shows. And this is a legit 6'5.5", 291 pounder who's got really good upper body strength and heavy hands, but he's also got some lateral agility. He's got a little bit of kind of a slap and step kind of a move to be able to create some pass rush from the inside. Had 7.5 sacks for Notre Dame a year ago. Again, I think that, as you said, Corbin, he would add a much needed kind of jolt in the arm in terms of the interior pass rush. And then as far as with Jarek Reed, again, he's just got to prove that he's healthy. But I just think that he's got an instinct and closing speed to him that just belies his size. I mean, he's 5'10", 195 pounds. This is not, as John Schneider kind of famously said, he's an angry little elf after drafting him. But he plays with such ferocity that I think that, again, it just adds a different element to Seattle special teams unit. You're right. He was not the same player a year ago. Now he's going to be, almost 2 years removed from or at least a year and a half removed from the surgery, that hopefully he is going to be back to himself. But there is an awful lot. This is a make or break year for Jarek Reed because Seattle's depth safety position, as you just talked about, is so good that if Jarek Reed is not back to playing with that same type of physicality, speed, and durability, then he could be on the outside looking in on this roster.
And capping off this the final player in this latest cluster here, coming in at number 36, Seattle last year, what an interesting rookie year. Almost the entire first half, he didn't even suit up. He was a healthy scratch every single game. It was beyond the halfway point of the season. And then the injury to Anthony Bradford, rather than put Christian Haynes, the higher draft pick of the two players, into the lineup, Mike McDonald and company, they pivoted and they put LaMea into the starting lineup for the last 6 games. And that change coincided with the run game being significantly better the last 6 weeks of the season, including that monster game against the Arizona Cardinals where Zach Charbonnet went off. LaMea had 2 huge blocks in that game that sprung Charbonnet for long runs, including his 50-plus yard touchdown run. LaMea made a pancake on that run. Pass protection-wise, he had his struggles, and that might be why we're not seeing him right now in the mix for that right guard position, at least in OTAs and minicamp. It was Christian Haynes against Anthony Bradford, and LaMea was the backup behind Gray Zabel at left guard. But I still very much expect that Seattle LaMea, when camp opens and the pads come out, I am still very much expecting that he is going to get an opportunity to try to battle for that right guard job because he's proven he can play both positions. And there were some really good things on film. Even if he had his struggles in pass pro, there were some really good things in the run game. And he's got the athleticism to be able to handle these zone blocking schemes, including the wide zone that is going to be demanded in Clint Kubiak's offense.
Yeah, I always thought that Seattle LaMea's playing style and size at 6'4", 311 pounds, just projected better to left guard anyways, rather than the right guard spot. And I think that, you can make an argument that we should have Seattle LaMea, ranked a little bit higher on this board, just considering the fact that technically he is the incumbent starter at right guard, starting the final 6 games of the season last year, as you talked about, Corbin, and got better as got better as the year went on. At the same time, some of the pass protection snaps were pretty darn ugly. And so I definitely, this is a young player that was being again put in a very difficult situation, like Mike Giroux talked about in the offensive tackle rankings before. I'm intrigued by what I saw from Seattle LaMea. I just think that this is a guy that, because he was a 4-year starter at Utah before he came to the Seahawks, obviously, then this is a pro. He is going to continue to get better, and he is somebody that I think that his position of versatility, similar to what we talked about before with Josh Jones, is going to wind up making him a quality part of the rotation. Not necessarily a starter. I think think the Seattle starting five is going to be pretty set. Maybe Anthony Bradford or Christian Haynes, the right guard position, is still to be sorted out. So Satoa Lamea to me is a quality backup in the NFL. If he start him, you are likely going to struggle, but I do think that he is a legitimate NFL blocker and likely will be a reliable one based on his previous track record with the Seahawks and Utah.
As always, you can follow on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We are 75 subscribers away from 20K. Help us get there, 12s. We greatly appreciate your support. When we come back for our Wednesday show, we're going to swing over to the defensive line. We got some talk about defensive tackles coming out of OTAs and heading towards training camp. We'll continue our 90-man countdown as well. You won't want to miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and thanks for listening. Go Hawks.